Minimalism. We all say we want it, but putting it into practice is diabolically difficult. Behind me, you see the majority of the books that I own. I've already gone through this exercise at my parents' house. This is my apartment. I have a lot of books in my apartment, and I want to get rid of them. I want to get rid of a lot of them because I own too much stuff. But the desire for preserving and maintaining information is conflicting with my desire to be minimalist. So here's the process I'm going to use to fix the problem. Step one, the lowest possible hanging fruit. Do I have any duplicate books? Yes, I have 2 duplicates. These are the same book. So I'm just going to pick the one with the cover that I like the most. Easy. Step 2 is a little bit more difficult. It's to ask myself, why exactly do I want to keep books around? And after a little bit of thinking, I realized it's for 2 reasons. One is the pure enjoyment of reading the story. There are certain stories, like the Cosmic Trilogy by C.S. Lewis, that are just amazing. You can't recreate a book like that on film. It's impossible. And so reading that book is something that I love to do, and I probably do it once every couple of years. I think certain books are worth keeping purely for the story value, purely for the joy of reading them. And then other books you keep around for informational purposes. That would be something like Algebra and Trigonometry or Overcoming Gravity. Those are reference guides. Those are ways to teach yourself stuff. And I think that a majority of those books you can get rid of, because once you have the information in your head, once you've gone through and read the book, you can just write down, hey, I read this book somewhere, and if you ever need the information again, just get a digital copy of the book. Easy peasy. But you could argue, what if the digital copy becomes unavailable, or what if AI takes over the world and we can't trust things that are digital anymore? Fair argument, but I would also say, if AI takes over the world and you can't trust what's digital anymore, you've probably got bigger problems than not knowing what macros to eat. So I think it's probably safe to just get the digital copies now, replace the physical books, and hopefully take this stack down from this big to something like this big. So all that aside, step 2 in the physical world is going to be separating the books that I have already read from the books that I have yet to read, because I'm obviously just going to read those books before I put them through the same process. Okay, so these are the books that I have read that are in my apartment, and these are the ones that I'm either partially through or have not read yet. Now, I'd just like to further categorize these. Now, how the organization is done is kind of subjective, but here's what I chose to do. This is books that are about information, the world, objects, things, ideas. These are stories. These are books that are about how to deal with other people, so they're business books. And these are books that are about how to deal with yourself, so they're self-help, brain, worldview, mindset. So deal with yourself, deal with others, read stories, and learn about the world. Those are the 4 categories that I chose. And some books are going to be in multiple categories. Like, this is a story about a real guy, but the book is highly mindset based. So I'm just going to put it in the one that resonates the most with me. And then bonus category is notes, things that I've written, stuff like that. I'm going to start with the littlest stack. I think that books like this, books about business or how to deal with other people, are probably the easiest to get rid of, because the lessons that they teach are pretty straightforward. You read a book like The Lean Startup and you learn, okay, you want to build an MVP, you want to test it, you want to do blah, blah, blah. And you can kind of summarize the whole book into a bunch of bullet points, because it's a little formulaic. People have figured out over the years what is good and what works in business. You read How to Win Friends and Influence People. The whole book is really just a series of bullet points on, these are things that we have found out that work. That's kind of how I think of it. So I think most of these can be just gotten rid of. And like I said, I have this thing where I like to preserve the information that I've read. So what I'm going to do before I get rid of them or give them away is make a list somewhere that I know where it is. Maybe it'll be Goodreads, maybe it'll just be a list I keep on my computer on a hard drive. I'll take each book that I've read and I'm going to make a few points about it, and then I can finally get these things out of my house. Now, when it comes to books like these that are kind of mental, based on your psychology or learning about your own brain, I think that they maintain their value for a lot longer, because as you grow and change, some of the things in these books are going to make sense and some of them won't, and over time that will change. So for example, something from this book that might have helped me when I was in college might not help me now, but something else might. So keeping these books around, I think, is a pretty good idea most of the time, because your brain is always changing and there's just a smorgasbord of information here. So I think what I can do is take the least useful books, and this is going to be very subjective, but I'm going to take the least useful books and get rid of them. And then the rest, I think it's probably best to just acquire digital copies now, so that if I want to go back, I can at any point. I can pick them off the shelf, and then anything that I just delete from my life, I'm going to somehow make a record of it, just to satisfy the part of me that wants to know that I read the book. Now, when it comes to stories, these are probably the best contender for keeping around, because, well, the entire purpose of having a book like this is to read it. It's not to obtain the information and then move on. It's to read the book. I love reading these stories because a lot of them cannot be put into film. So I think the strategy here is ask yourself, how hard would it be to acquire this book again if I had to? For example, Terminal, that book right there. Apologies for putting my dog over. Apologies for putting my dog in the video. That book is a little bit hard to get sometimes. So I'm probably not going to get rid of it, because it's almost a collector's item at this point. I've got the full set. These guys are probably not going to be too hard to get copies of. Dracula, there is no universe in which it's going to be hard to get a copy of Dracula. So I think the rarity of the book, added to how often you read it, is a good indicator of whether you should keep it or not, or if you should just make a log of having read it so that you can purchase it again or read a digital copy if you ever want to. So most of these can be eliminated, but a complete set or something rare or something that I just happen to read once every year should probably stick around. Now we come to the books that are about things, how to learn about the world, blah blah blah. Again, this is going to come down to a couple different weighted attributes. So for example, how often do you partake or do the thing that the book is about? If it's urban exploration, that's a hobby that I'm pretty involved in. I do that a lot. So I'm going to keep these books around because, one, they're kind of rare. Two, I do urban exploration still. Same with the knife making. That's a hobby that I've put a lot of my time and self into. Digital lighting and rendering. If I ever need that information again, I'm not super involved in digital lighting and rendering these days. So I can just write down that I've read the book and I can eliminate it from my physical space, and I can bring it back in if it ever becomes relevant. Same thing with algebra and trigonometry. I've already gone through and done it. I've written the notes. And if I ever need to get deep into the math again, I don't need the physical book here because I kind of know what thread to pull on. So I can eliminate the book from my physical space and I can bring it back in if it ever becomes relevant. Same thing with this documentation for machine learning. It's all online. I can just relearn it if I need to, or I can, pull on a thread that I've created for myself by writing down a few bullet points about this book and logging it in my personal logger somewhere. The fear of losing this information, I think, is a little unfounded, because losing it entirely would require either total internet deletion, total inability to trust the information on the internet, or I mean all books being destroyed. You're always going to be able to figure out how to do algebra again. So if I didn't have this book in my physical space and I had no way to figure out how algebra worked, we would have some pretty serious problems that are probably more important than that. So that's a long-winded way to say you can get rid of most of these except the ones that are relevant to you. And I've allowed myself to take 1 or 2 books from each category to keep, so these are the ones that I'm immediately planning to get rid of and log. Now, my bookshelf isn't full and overflowing over here. My bookshelf has the 4 categories, and this is actually a really cool benefit of doing this system. These are the stories that I find the most valuable, that I think are actually worth holding on to for now. There's probably going to be more later and it might change over time. These are the books about how to use your own brain. These are the books about business and dealing with other people. And these are the books about information, various topics. We've got urban exploration, we've got Dungeons and Dragons, we've got knife making. So this shelf represents maximizing my interests, maximizing the representation of those interests in book form, and rejecting things that are not of those sets. I can rely on the collective efforts of humanity to make other information available to me. You know, like if I was to dabble in a book like this, or a book that's based in sales, or a book about networking, or books about vitamins, you know, things like that. If I want to dabble in all these other interest areas, you know, and I've got like a workout book here, I can do that, and I don't have to force myself to keep the information on hand. I can rely on humanity to keep that information out there and available for me, and I can just keep the stuff that actually matters the most. So I think it's about letting go of the idea that I have to hang on to and preserve with dear life the information that I come across at all costs. No, it's about keeping the stuff that matters the most and rejecting things that don't matter. Instead of saying yes to everything, say no to most things and only yes to the things that you really, really care about.